Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Angel Rated Show. I'm Angela Bryant, and with me today I have Pauline Wiles, who is a website designer who helps solo entrepreneurs create an online home that they love. She coaches her clients towards websites that are low on clutter and high on impact, which sounds fantastic. Welcome, Pauline. It's lovely to have you here.
Hello, delighted to be here. Thank you, Angela.
So, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your online business?
Yes, well, like many of us who find our way to working for ourselves, my career history is pretty varied. So, the short version is that after I left university, I had mainly technical jobs. That was how you and I met. Um, and that involved an airline, the UK government. Then I moved to California, worked at Stanford University. But it's fair to say I didn't settle in those roles, and I certainly didn't feel like I found my groove. And so after a particularly bad stint with a startup company, I took some time off and mainly as therapy for me, I wrote a novel. So that's a whole other story. We don't really need to go there. But fast forward to the point where I self-published about 4 or 5 books. I was going to writing conferences and I realized that many other authors were completely overwhelmed when it came to marketing their work, and particularly with the technology that they needed to get set up with both an email list and a website. And then, in honesty, I dithered around a bit more before I realized that the value that I could really bring would be to help these authors with their websites. So that's how I started. And since then, I've broadened out a bit so that I now work with service-based entrepreneurs who want a very straightforward but very effective website. And so that's where I'm at. I'm loving the work, and the combination for me of technical things, which is how I kind of got started, plus the creativity that I think I was lacking. Those are the combination that really get me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, that sounds fab. Yes. Always good to have something that gets us out of bed in the morning.
Right.
So, I like to find out a bit more about why people have sort of started their business. What's their driver behind it, and what's their, obviously, you've told us a bit about your story. So, is there something that you feel like is a big why behind this business, something that's really important to you and that motivates you to keep going?
Yeah, in a number of other roles I've had, I've noticed that too many people are daunted by technology. And I think there are too many people with a lot to bring to the world and a lot of gifts to offer and to share, and they can't get past the technology bit. So, in a previous side hustle, I was doing computer training, and again, watching people with a lot of value and gifts to offer. They needed help with the basics of their computers. And it's the same now, really, with the websites that many small business owners and entrepreneurs are being held back because they don't have the basics in place to establish themselves and their business. So you and I talked a little bit about this earlier, and I kind of see myself as the catalyst or the enabler for whatever their business or their cause or their passion, or information that the world really needs to see, helping them get to the point where the technology isn't the barrier and they can then build on that.
Yeah, I think when we talked earlier, it was very obvious that there's a lot of issues that are facing the planet that you care deeply about. And very much your role and something you can bring in this situation is being that underpinning, providing that website that then allows that movement to flourish and to support it in that way. Are there any particular sort of movements or things that are going on in the world that you would most like working with, or that you're most suitable to, or that you care most about?
Well, I've noticed two things with websites, as well as helping the individual behind the site get their story across and provide them with the platform they need. I've noticed it can also be a tipping point for people who realize that they are serious about a cause and are ready to take it forward and are ready to claim that territory. So up to now, I've worked with several coaches who have really interesting things to offer. One client, had a difficult background and has written a book about it and wants to inspire other women. that they're not on their own and that her journey has something to offer them as well. More recently, one of my clients, she offers help with food disorders and helping women get past some, eating habits and eating behaviors. I would love to work with any organizations that help promote literacy. So obviously writing is a thing for me. I love to read. The local library here is actually doing a really good job during, well, we're still, as we record this, we're still in a partial lockdown. So the library does a fantastic job of reaching out to local communities for education and early literacy. So yeah, I think there are just limitless ways that if somebody has something they want to share with the world or a cause that they want to either inform others about or promote, that there's a lot of scope. Sometimes it feels like everyone has a website already, but that really isn't true. So there's still lots of scope for people's passions and causes.
So where would you like to see that your business grow to? If you could sort of look into the future, have you got a vision for how you would like to help in the future if you look forward 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, well, something I'm seeing already, and this comes up a lot in the author community, because despite popular opinion, authors are not generally millionaires, and many writers are not really making a great living from their books. But what does come up is the affordability of working with a website designer. Right now, I mainly do one-on-one work, and in fairness, that is an investment for the client. It can get to be a little expensive to work one-on-one with a website designer. So the obvious direction that I would like to think about developing is, can I take the same process and structure and thinking that goes into a website and help to show a group of students how to do those basic parts themselves. And of course, as you know, if we work with a group instead of one-to-one, then we as individuals can reach far more people and help more people. And of course, it gets so much more affordable for the person on the other end who wants the website.
Makes perfect sense. Definitely. It looks like, the way that a lot of business start thinking about going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there particular, I'm just thinking about some of these other ways that businesses might give back. You've talked about literacy and some of the things that you see as really important issues with the world. Have you got thoughts on how your business might be able to give back in the future, even if you can't do so now, or support people in need or people who are less fortunate, or help causes that are important to you?
Yeah, well, certainly as I grow, then the opportunities, especially if I am able to get some kind of group learning structure going, the opportunities to give people information that they can use in a self-guided way, that gets enormous. And I already am trying to make a big deal out of the website platform that I use, because it's particularly affordable for people who are just getting started. And yeah, clearly in every piece of work I do, and whenever I talk to a client or I'm reviewing an existing website, I am hoping to encourage them to be thoughtful about, what does this site say about their business mission and their values. And of course, they need to be aware that even the photos and images that they choose to include send a subtle message to the world about their values and what they prioritize.
Very true, definitely. Now, obviously, I was just going to say, it sounds like we were getting quite a lot of aeroplane and gardening noise, or one or the other, but we will persevere. So just thinking more about your more personal values and your personal beliefs. You alluded earlier to the fact that we first met 25 years ago in our first graduate job, and have gone very different paths and then ended up in a bizarrely similar sort of roles. But during that time, obviously, we started off in the UK and then you moved over to the US. So can you share something about how that affected that move? And that quite a large move has affected sort of your beliefs, your values, and subsequent decisions you've made in your life and business.
Well, moving to the US for me was clearly a risk. We moved here for my husband's job. And the the catalyst that gave me the courage really was I was completely miserable in my job at the time, and so leaving the country seemed like a good way to untangle a bit of a job situation. But really, having taken the risk of basically selling everything I had and packing up a life in London to move to San Francisco, once you take a risk of that size and you come out the other side of it kind of still alive and still happy, it definitely gives confidence for what else is possible. And because I was then working more or less in the Silicon Valley environment, where, as you might guess, everything is considered possible and nothing is off the table if one is willing to work for it. That certainly gave me some perspective on the opportunities that many of us have. I don't want to say all of us, because some of us are stuck with circumstances where really opportunities are very minimal. But in some cases, and certainly in my case, I was lucky that there were definitely opportunities there if I chose them.
Right, and we're back with headphones and hopefully a lot less background noise.
Yes. So moving to the US definitely gave me a different idea about risk. But the thing that fascinates me, I don't know if you remember the film, it was called Sliding Doors, where one woman's life goes in two completely different directions. I honestly don't know how life would have played out for me or what choices I would have made if I'd stayed in England. So I don't want to say that, oh yeah, I moved to the US and became a different person, because it's perfectly possible that I would have evolved and taken up running and started this business from England. So it's a fascinating topic as to how much that happens is choices versus environment versus some bigger force.
Absolutely. Just coming back to some of your sort of more personal values, have you got a worldview or I'm just thinking, something that drives how you approach life that you would like to share?
Overall, I think I would say I view fairness as very important. I view personal responsibility and willingness to work for what we are looking for to be important. Being this far away from my family certainly focuses my mind on where priorities are. But again, that was a choice I made, and particularly at the moment, I'm incredibly grateful for the technology that I know in previous times, if somebody moved across an ocean, then that was pretty much the end of their time with their family. So I'm grateful that we now live in a world where we can make big geographical decisions and yet still remain very close to the people we care about.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense to me. So just coming back onto maybe something a bit lighter, just a bit more, so that people get to know you a bit more and can use that maybe to understand more about who you are and the business that you run. Tell us something. I mean, obviously you've made a big move there by moving over to the US, but if you could travel anywhere in the world, since we came from an airline background many, many moons ago, where would you go? Where would be your favorite travel destination?
Yes, I often kick myself for not making a little more of that airline time when it was available. So I think you and I have both visited New Zealand. I've only been to the North Island. So before 2020 came along with all its surprises, I was definitely thinking about a return trip to the South Island of New Zealand. And also countries like Ecuador and Chile, I hear really lovely things. So I think later this year, my first trip, when we're able to travel anywhere, will probably be back to the UK. But there are certainly these other countries on the horizon that are exciting.
And what about hobbies? And I know you've run a marathon, is that right?
2 marathons,
Two marathons.
very slowly. So I do not plan any more marathons. They are quite the undertaking. But yes, I do enjoy running. I'm not fast. I will never be fast. But in terms of getting out, getting into the fresh air, getting away from the desks that we all spend far too much time at. And we're very lucky here. The climate is such that for most of the year, running is extremely pleasant.
So how did you get on doing 2 marathons? I mean, slowly, what did you learn from doing those? What drove you to do them?
Well, I certainly didn't do them back to back.
No.
To be honest, my husband started it with the first one. He ran the San Francisco Marathon and made it look shockingly easy. And I promptly thought that this would be a really fun thing to try. Yeah, the thing that I think that people don't realize about marathons is when you watch a marathon, you think it's all about the 4 or 5, or in my case, almost 6 hours of effort that happens on the day. And like so much of life, it really isn't about the on the day thing. It's the months and months of boring, steady, tedious, grueling preparation that goes in before it. And you're nodding. I'm sure you've got some things in your own life that relate to that. But yeah, the hard work is done, mostly in private, mostly at 6 a.m. when you don't feel like it. And I think there's definitely lessons for us in business for that. And really for any goal we're trying to achieve, that the little by little, just keep putting the work in. Some days are easier than others. Sometimes it will be enjoyable and many times it won't be as enjoyable. These are good lessons. Yeah. And bring snacks.
I think I was definitely nodding because it did make me immediately think what good lessons that, how much of that applied to business as well, especially when you think about people who are seen as overnight success, which is almost like that's the day of the marathon, that overnight success, and they've been working away, doing all the hard work behind the scenes that you never see.
Completely, yes.
Probably for years beforehand, let alone months and weeks.
Yes, so. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about something else that's very close to my heart is about sort of how you look after yourself so that you can do these things and run a business and sort of care for yourself. And so what about things like self-care? What other things do you like to do with your time to keep yourself motivated? And
yeah, I've noticed recently, and especially with the challenges that spring of 2020 has brought us, I could definitely do better than self-care. I found that because I love my work, once I sit down and start tinkering with somebody's website, the good thing is that hours can go by, and the bad thing is that hours can go by. So I definitely need to do better about that. In the past, I've had great success with short meditations. Meditation, I know, sounds scary to a lot of people. I've only ever taken it to the level of 10 minutes of sitting quietly and either just breathing or listening to an app. That has been enormously helpful for me, not just in the time when I'm doing it, but then in noticing at other times of day, what am I actually doing right now? What is my brain thinking about? What are the voices inside my head telling me? All those kind of good things. And then my other big thing is sleep. I will very rarely sacrifice sleep. Everything else in my life can go wrong, and I will still prioritize sleep. And I think that is important because I notice on the days when I'm tired, everything is more of a struggle. My food choices are not as good. I maybe don't then get out to exercise. So for me, starting with a decent amount of sleep makes everything else more likely to follow on.
Sounds perfect. Sounds like great advice and great ideas for making your business run smoothly. So is there anything else about your business or what you do, what motivates you that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
So where I'm starting to notice I'm different from other website designers is for a long time, I've been interested in organizing and decluttering and simplifying. Again, we could probably do a mini episode on that, but I have found with my website work that where I'm really trying to get a message across to my clients is less is more. And I think this applies in much of our lives and in much of our business, that we tend to overcomplicate things, and we tend to think more is more and more is necessary. And certainly for good websites, the less information or the more curated information we can put there, then in fact the better. And I, as I said, I need to do a better job of that in my own life, of going with the simple approach when in doubt.
Sounds like the Marie Kondo of websites.
Well, certainly, if people have heard of her, that's that's a really good way to think about it. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of describing it. Well, it's been absolutely lovely talking to you and catching up. And yeah, thank you once again for joining me and for joining this episode of the Angel Rated Show. Do you want to finish off by just telling people a bit more about where they can find you, how they can contact you, those sort of things?
Yeah, thank you. The best place, not surprisingly, is my website, paulinewiles.com. I have a free website starter kit that people are welcome to download. And of course, I'm always happy to connect on other social platforms and answer any and all website questions.
Fantastic. And obviously, Pauline Wiles is also listed on Angel Rated, so you can find out more about her details there too. And if you've worked with her in the past, you can add your review. So thanks again for joining us, Pauline. We will add all your information about your website to the show notes, and they will be available on angelrated.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe to the show and leave a review on your favourite podcast platform. And don't forget to share this episode with your friends.